Hi. Today, we're going behind the scenes of the State of Business Execution Benchmarks Report. Joining us to talk about accounts payable, we have Christy Brewer, Global Business Development Manager for Accounts Payable at Celonis. Christy is a veteran of the P2P solution space and has spent over 20 years of her career driving value in accounts payable. Welcome. And Christy, let's start with what struck you the most from the findings of the State of Business Execution Report?
Great. Thank you, Costanza. Well, I was pretty interested, first off, in the delta between the average and top performers around touchless invoice rates specifically. I mean, average companies still only have touchless invoice rates of about 27% according to the report, while our top performers can actually achieve 85% or better. And I know for a fact that some companies can even get higher rates than that. It's really quite a huge gap.
You've told me before that touchless invoice rate is one of the messiest and most important KPIs to address in AP. Why is that?
Yeah, I've been doing this for a really long time. Yeah, in my opinion, it is the first of all the KPIs to track because it's a key indicator of performance around the other KPIs. So it's really the foundational core of the entire AP process. So follow the money, right, means follow the document that triggers the money. So it's the hardest thing to fix. However, when you do tackle it successfully, everything else starts to naturally fall into place. So I have this sort of garden analogy that sometimes helps. So if you have a garden, right, and you need to have really good soil, or in this case, a cleared and ready to pay invoice as the foundation of the whole process. If you do not, then everything else you see above the ground, DPO, paid on time, working capital, compliance, et cetera, will never really flourish. So there's really no amount of sunshine and water that you can keep throwing at it that will make a difference if you can't get that invoice processed accurately and fast in the first place.
That makes sense. So why is it so difficult to do? What are the challenges that companies are facing when it comes to touchless invoicing?
Yeah, there's a couple of key challenges, and it's a lot of it's around how that manual invoice and even the electronic invoices are ingested, right? So 75% or so of all invoices are still ingested in a manual form. So physical paper, those are being received in various locations around the world in a really distributed way. They have country by country regulations, and this tends to cause a lot of obstacles and logistical challenges. Then we actually have emailed images or PDFs that come directly from the supplier. And I sometimes hear people talk about email being an electronic form of invoice receipt, when in reality, there's nothing electronic about an emailed invoice. It's simply an image of a piece of paper and still requires all of that same manual work to be performed. Then we have electronic invoices, actual, electronic invoices. Those aren't perfect either. We have EDI, which comes with inaccurate data, especially, PO-backed EDI, invoices. They still require line matching and other validations. Plus the EDI formats, themselves are really complex and difficult to set up in the first place. E-invoices are fabulous, they're great, but can also have challenges. And after 20 years of the electronic invoice, we're starting to really see vendor fatigue around that. So that means that our suppliers are being asked to join more and more and more networks for their invoice submission. Honestly, the truth is that whoever owns the leverage in the supplier, buyer relationship, that's who will end up dictating how the actual invoice is submitted. So
I can see why that's incredibly messy. You've obviously spent your entire career helping companies optimize their AP processes. What's the key to getting it right, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a really complex process. I think more than people think sometimes. That's why we have an entire industry around trying to help it. However, I think there's a few tried and true methods that will get companies, part of the way there. And then I can also tell you that I think there's some truly mind-blowing things that you can do to change the course of the AP process in a major way, some newer things. So I guess a few of the basics to start, things I would recommend companies do is really, accommodate multiple invoice ingestion methods, right? Don't make it hard on your suppliers. Centralize the physical paper invoice receiving and scanning, and make sure that email images flow into that same process. Then you got to capture and extract the raw data off of that manual invoice really, really well. You have to have really, extremely high accuracy and perfect that early in the process. I always talk about garbage in, garbage out, right? So bad data causes problems all the way down that sort of virtual assembly line in the process. Then you have to make sure you're using modern, technology, or modernize your existing, technology that you've already invested in as best you can. One example is what we call cognitive capture here at Celonis, and we also have machine learning. But this will create really accurate capture and validation of the invoice data against connected, data, master data in your ERP. This is actually something that Celonis can help with as well. Finally, I think the last of the basics is speed. You have to really, that physical processing of the invoice has to happen within a day, and that's completely, doable. Before this, the invoice doesn't even exist, right? We don't know anything about it. Then the validations and the matching of the invoice data to, PO, vendor, and other master data should really happen in real time to set you up for success. Now, that's kind of the basics. And once you have that set up and you have visibility of the invoice and that basic data, this is where the real magic comes into play with process mining and execution management. So process mining in the AP environment can really help give companies a uniquely visual, such as with Celonis, and most importantly, understandable, insights into the process. That can really help objectify what is typically a time-consuming and subjective exceptions or annotation process, right? So all of these problems that fell through the basic process or fell through the cracks, like if you couldn't match to a valid PO number or vendor ID, or there was a price discrepancy or incorrect tax codes, code, we at Celonis might, call some of these execution gaps, basically anything that kind of gums up the process. So process mining really helps to surface those gaps and those problems. And then it flows right into execution management. That comes into play, which is really a natural evolution of process mining and takes everything, to the next level. So what happens is that the remaining nuances of the process are then optimized. Next best actions are recommended and supported or even automated completely, further helping that touchless part of the process. So in the case of Celonis, we can wrap all of this around and optimize the existing systems and processes. These are areas that you may have already invested in to accommodate some of the basics we described above. But we can also, where needed, actually fill in, any of those functional operational gaps that you need to address. After 20 years of trying to make this right, process mining and the evolution into execution management, to me, are the biggest differentiators, that I've seen. And it's a huge reason why I came to Celonis to be part of it. So I think for everyone, listening to this, there's been, and has been on that AP journey, I guess, I'm saying that this really is sort of the dream come true in the AP process. It's finally here. And we really can't compare it to anything else I've ever seen, in my history in this industry. So,
I mean, I'm biased too, but that sounds great. Thanks for joining us and sharing your expertise.